that the people who have the earliest success, the mind-blowing success, they're the most likely to be unsatisfied with their lives at the end of their lives.
The story that you tell about Darwin was unnerving.
He could have been the man on the plane. Charles Darwin, who is on anybody's list of the 3 greatest scientists of all time, he was the talk of the town.
His name rings through the annals of history, man.
He's a hero.
This is, I think I may have been even more struck by the Darwin confession than the guy on the plane.
Many people who we revere today, who had early astonishing success, they died unhappy. But we don't record that. We record their success, not the unhappiness with their life later on. Charles Darwin had his greatest successes starting when he was 27 years old. We all know that he visited the Galapagos Islands on the voyage of the Beagle, which is a 5-year sailing voyage around the world to collect plants and animals and send them back to England. He was getting quite famous in his absence, but when he got back, he drops this intellectual atomic bomb, which is the ideas that led to his theory of natural selection, aka evolution. And for 30 years, he was rich, he was famous, he was the man. But then his progress stopped. It stopped because he didn't have the mathematical ability to keep up with his own research. His research passed him by, technically. And there was actually an advance that he needed that today we call genetics, that he couldn't understand. It was written in German. He didn't study German. He was a bad student. He didn't do his mathematics homework. He never learned very much about statistics. And so the result was that he was left in the dust, which happens to people in their 40s and at most their early 50s, based on their early success. And he spent the last 20 years of his life complaining about the disappointing, he wrote 11 books after that point, but they're all sort of derivative. They're like straw. And he said, I don't have the energy to do any work that I really find satisfying to his friends. And, he died disappointed. He died sad. Maybe the greatest naturalist of all time died sad. He could have been the man on the plane. And this is not what the world tells you. The world says, bust your pick. Get as early as you can. Get 10,000 hours, man. Kill it. Bank it. And if so what? The sine qua non of happiness excellence, retire at 40. Well, how many people do you know who've done that, who've actually gotten happier, who retired at 40? I know none. The point is that's not how human endeavor actually works. And so we need a better model. And I saw that. I did the research and I said, time to build a better model that actually describes the dynamics of human experience, that actually digs into what actually brings us happiness. And that's what my research is about. That's what I'm dedicating the rest of my life to exploring.
All right. So to put a fine point on it, the punchline ends up being there's 2 kinds of intelligence.
Yes.
So type 1 is fluid, sort of raw intelligence.
It's Darwin's genius, was fluid intelligence. It's innovative capacity. It's what made Tom, which is your indefatigable energy, your focus, your ability to get better and better, to be the ninja in your particular field, which gets better and better through your 20s and 30s.
It sounds sexy even as you're saying it. That's what I find so horrifying.
Totally. That's hustle culture, man.
Yeah.
Hustle culture rewards that. And by the way,
it's been an awesome ride.
Oh, and it's super addictive.
Yeah.
It's super addictive. It actually works in the same dopamine pathways as methamphetamines and alcohol. And
yes, it is my one addiction.
Success addiction.
Yeah,
it's 100%. A killer, and you write about it in the book about the success addiction that virtually all entrepreneurs, virtually all strivers have. You can be the ace electrician and have a success addiction because we are wired to want to be excellent and to be admired, which leads you to get better and better and better at what you do, using what we've identified as what psychologists have identified for a long time now as fluid intelligence. The structure of your brain lends itself to just incredible energy and focus, and to get better and better and better as an individual at solving any problem faster than others. The problem is, this is the problem that led to Darwin's misery and so many others. It peaks in your late 30s or early 40s, and then it declines, and then it declines faster. And if you try to keep your groove, you're going to ride that thing to the basement, and you're going to be the man on the plane. You're going to be Darwin. You're going to be bitter and unhappy. And most people think they get one curve. That's the bad news. The good news is that's not your only curve. You have a second curve that comes in behind it, which is not your fluid intelligence, which goes up, peaks, comes down. It's your crystallized intelligence, your wisdom, which doesn't have fast working memory. The innovative capacity is not as good, but it's your ability to identify patterns, to use the information in your environment. It's like having the New York Public Library at your disposal. It takes a while to get the information. Like, I can't remember that thing because it's on the 4th floor back in the stacks. I got to send my guy to get it, but it's in there, and you can use this information to be a teacher, to be a historian, to have actual wisdom. That's what you get better at through your 40s and 50s. And you can stay high in your 60s and 70s and beyond. That's your true success curve as you get older. The key is you got to walk from fluid intelligence over to crystallized intelligence. You got to walk from the star litigator to the managing partner, from the innovative startup entrepreneur to the venture capitalist, from the mathematical researcher to the professor. Those are the different curves you got to go from one to the other. And if you're stuck on the first, and if that's your vision of your own greatness, and you can't be thrown off that, you'll be chasing that for the rest of your life, even though it's in the basement, and you can't get it back.
So there are some people that can wake themselves up out of the matrix, other people that must be awoken. Mm-hmm. I do fear sometimes that I need to be awoken, but you woke yourself up. I'm so curious. So you're doing your thing. You're very successful. And I don't know, maybe, and I guess we should tell people that you started out as a musician, a French horn player, nonetheless, very specific.
Yes.
And
very esoteric.
And made a living as a professional French horn player.
The Barcelona Symphony
31,
for a bunch of years.
If I'm not mistaken.
Yes, exactly right.
All right. So you're killing that game, but you realize that you're declining. Do you think that going on that is what allowed you to then consciously step away while it seems like you were still in your prime as the leader, the president of this think tank?
I got very lucky. That I failed my first career. And after having a lot of success, I went into early decline. And out of desperation to support my family and to have a future out of my 20s, I had to change gears. I didn't have a college education. I dropped out of college, kicked out, splitting hairs. When I was 19, I went on the road as a musician. As my parents call it, my gap decade, right? Which you can imagine how fun that was for them. And I kind of made a living, kind of made my rent. But I was living my best life because I was a young guy. I didn't have health insurance. I didn't go to the dentist for 6 years at one point, which I'm still paying for. But like I've told friends, I never missed a day without cigarettes. So, you figure out what my priorities were at that particular point in my life. And fortunately, I gave that up a long time ago. But I was going into decline as a French horn player, and things that used to be easy became hard, and things that were hard became impossible. And I saw the writing on the wall. I saw a lot of older classical musicians who were deeply alcoholic and unhappy and had been good and now weren't, and didn't have the respect of the younger people that were having a harder time making a living. And I thought, look, I'm barely making a living now. I'm ambitious and it's going well. I mean, look, I was in the Barcelona Symphony, so I was making a middle-class living, and that's a good orchestra. But I knew that I couldn't keep it up, and so I had to change. Just by necessity, I had to change. And I went back to college, got my college degree by correspondence, and at 31 left to start my PhD. That, by the way, that's not just an arbitrary thing. That's the family business. My father was a college professor. My grandfather was a college professor. So I knew that business better than any other. I know how to do a PhD. My father was working on his PhD even when I was a kid. So I saw that whole process. That wasn't foreign or exotic to me at all. And I knew what professors do for a living. And I said, okay, I can do that because I know that. I was very ashamed. I felt horrible about myself that I had failed at this thing that it was everything to me. I mean, I would have just as soon died than to not be a French horn player because there was nothing else. But I didn't die, and I couldn't die because I was a married man. I was in love with my wife, and we were going to have kids, and what was I going to do? I mean,
were you honest with her about what you're going through at that point?
Yeah, she knew well. She knew full well. I mean, she knows me. I'm an open book with her, and I mean, she's also smart, and she knows me super well in no small part because when we were dating, we didn't speak the same language, and we spoke rudimentary amounts of the same language for the entire first year of our marriage.
Oh.
You got to know each other. You get to know each other in a deep human way when you actually can't talk because you can't lie. I recommend this to everybody.
That's really unexpected.
Yeah.
How did you fall in love if you guys weren't speaking the same language?
Man, if you saw her. I was 24. She's a rock and roll singer from Barcelona. She's beautiful. And she's lovely, and she's kind, and she's smart. And weirdly, she liked me. And so, and I threw in big time. I moved to Barcelona to try to convince her to marry me without speaking a word of the same language. This is what entrepreneurs do, right? This is the ultimate entrepreneurial experience, is to give away your heart and to take a chance. That's what young people today, they're so non-entrepreneurial if they're unwilling to fall in love. Because that, I mean, forget the companies, forget the money, forget all the cool stuff that you and I have been able to do professionally. Fall in love, that's entrepreneurship. Right? That's the big bet.
I have never heard anybody describe it like that.
Well, entrepreneurship,
because of risk taking? Like,
yeah,
why do you?
Entrepreneurship is taking a big risk in looking for major rewards, for explosive returns. I'm not going to tell you how to denominate those returns. It's faith in resources that you don't already have in hand. These are the characteristics of the entrepreneur. When I was writing a textbook on entrepreneurship, I was looking at that and I'm saying, it's a big mistake to talk about this in terms of money. We should be talking about this in terms of love, because that's the currency of life. And when a whole generation of young people are miserable because they're comfortable putting millions of people's dollars at risk to start a company, but they're unwilling to go bankrupt in their relationships, they're unwilling to have somebody crush them by breaking up with them, they're just not very entrepreneurial. That's the problem. We have people who are too non-entrepreneurial, which is one of the reasons that we have too few people who are in love today, as far as I'm concerned. So that was the thing, man. I took that, I jumped, I did that. And that was actually very good, because that gave me a lot of confidence that I could conquer my fear. I could take a risk. I mean, look, it was a very low chance that this was going to work out, and we're going to learn each other's language, and she's going to realize I'm a hopeless stooge or something, or we're not going to love each other or something. And we just celebrated our 30th wedding anniversary.
Congratulations.
We have 3 adult children. Crazy.
Incredible.
It's amazing. So that was, we know each other deeply, deeply, deeply. She knows all of my nonsense because she knows it without the words. You can shade all kinds of truth with words. You can't when it's just your heart. You're just a heart to heart.
Now, that's really unexpected. That's very intriguing to me. Because I have leaned on language so heavily in my life, in fact, if there's anything, so I once went live for 24 hours as a thing, like to celebrate hitting a certain number on Facebook. I don't even remember now what number, but went live for 24 hours.
Success.
And then literally that morning or the next afternoon, whatever, I flew to London. And then I did an event with no microphone, and I spoke for 9 hours. So at the end of that, something happened to my vocal cords, and I was having a hard time talking, and I could feel like my throat would click. Right. It was so distressing. Go to a therapist, they stick a camera down my throat, the whole 9, like trying to figure out what did I do. And I start really worrying, what does my life look like if I can't speak?
Yeah.
And that was the first time where I was like, whoa, like imagine losing that thing that made you you. Yeah. And I've always been highly verbal. That was always the thing that I could. Terrible at math, got horrendous SAT scores, but I'm highly verbal.
You're extremely expressive.
I will give you that. I'll take that.
It's absolutely true.
So, and I thought, oh God, what happens if I lose my voice? So I can't imagine trying to court the woman who is now my wife of almost 20 years without my voice. That's interesting.
And me too. Look, I mean, I talk for a living. I literally, blah, blah, blah.
If you like that clip, check out another powerful clip right here, and I'll see you there.